The transport shuttle hummed quietly as it approached the massive research station floating in the darkness of space. Inside, Dr. Hyun-woo pressed his face against the window, watching the structure grow larger. The xenobotanical outpost, Kepler 442, looked like a giant metal flower. With multiple arms extending from a central hub, each arm housed different laboratories, all dedicated to studying the strangest and most dangerous plants in the galaxy. Beside him, Dae-sung was reviewing files on his datapad, his young face scrunched in concentration. "Did you read the safety briefing?" he asked without looking up. "It says we need to complete 17 different training modules before we can even enter the main labs." Hyun-woo smiled. "I skimmed it. How dangerous can plants be?" Dae-sung finally looked up, his eyes wide. "The last team lost 3 collection drones on Veritas 7. The plants there dissolved their circuits in seconds, and that was just from being near them." The shuttle docked with a metallic clang that echoed through the passenger compartment. As they gathered their belongings, Hyun-woo felt his excitement growing. He had spent years studying Earth plants, but this was different. This was a chance to work with vegetation from worlds humans had never even dreamed of before joining the galactic community. The airlock opened with a hiss. Standing on the other side was Director Velrith, a tall insectoid alien with 4 arms and compound eyes that seemed to look in multiple directions at once. His exoskeleton was a deep purple color, and his mandibles clicked together as he spoke through a translator device. "Welcome to Kepler 442, Velrith said, his mechanical voice flat but polite. "I am Director Velrith. I trust your journey was comfortable?" "Very comfortable, thank you," Hyun-woo replied, extending his hand. Velrith looked at the hand for a moment, before carefully touching it with one of his clawed appendages. The gesture seemed awkward for both of them. Velrith led them through the station's corridors. The walls were lined with windows that looked into various laboratories. In one room, a plant with glowing blue leaves grew under special lights. In another, a team of aliens in protective suits worked around something that looked like a giant Venus flytrap, except it was the size of a small car. "Your quarters are in Section 7, Velrith explained as they walked. "You will share the residential area with the rest of the botanical team." Dr. G1, your medical officer, arrived last week. She has already completed her orientation. They passed through several security checkpoints. At each one, Velrith had to input codes and submit to retinal scans. "Security is very important here," he said. "Many of our specimens are extremely dangerous. One breach could kill everyone on this station." Dae-sung swallowed hard. Hyun-woo just nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. They entered a large common area where several beings were gathered. A human woman, in a white medical coat, looked up and waved. "You must be Hyun-woo and Dae-sung. I'm Ji-won." She had a warm smile and tired eyes that suggested she had been working long hours. Next to her stood another alien. This one reptilian with scales that shifted between green and blue. "I am Kaylor," he said in a deep, rumbling voice. "I am the biochemist for this station. I hope you humans understand the serious nature of our work here." "Of course," Hyun-woo said, though he noticed Kaylor's tone was somewhat hostile. A human woman with oil-stained hands and short hair walked over. "Don't mind Kaylor. He thinks everyone is too careless. I'm Nari, chief engineer. I keep all the containment systems running so these plants don't kill us in our sleep." "Containment failures are not a joke," Kaylor hissed, his scales turning a darker shade of blue. Velrith's mandibles clicked again. A sound Hyun-woo was beginning to recognize as a sign of irritation. "Perhaps we should show our new arrivals the reason for all these precautions." The director led them deeper into the station, through corridors that became progressively more secured. They finally stopped at a massive door, marked with symbols in multiple languages. All of them meant the same thing. "Extreme danger. Beyond this door is our maximum security containment lab," Velrith said. "Inside is our newest acquisition. We retrieved it from Veritas 7 3 weeks ago." He paused, his compound eyes fixed on the humans. "The planet Veritas 7 is listed as a death world. The entire ecosystem is hostile to almost all known forms of life. Ji-won stepped closer to Hyun-woo. I've been reviewing the data. It's incredible and terrifying. Velrith entered a long series of codes. The door opened slowly, revealing a room beyond. The walls were transparent, allowing them to see into multiple sealed chambers. Most were empty, except for monitoring equipment. But one chamber held something that made Hyun-woo catch his breath. It was beautiful. The plant stood about 2 meters tall, with a thick trunk that spiraled upward. Its leaves were a deep emerald color, with veins that seemed to glow with a soft golden light. At the top, a cluster of flowers bloomed in shades of purple and red that Hyun-woo had never seen before. The colors seemed to shift and change as he watched. "This is Mortis Florae," Velrith said quietly, as if speaking too loud might wake something dangerous. "The name means death flower in one of your Earth languages. We have tested its secretions on 17 different species. All of them died within seconds of exposure." Kaylor pulled up a holographic display. "The plant produces a neurotoxin we have designated Thanatos compound. When it contacts living tissue, it causes immediate neural shutdown. The brain simply stops working. There is no antidote." "How does it deliver the toxin?" Dae-sung asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Multiple methods," Kaylor replied, manipulating the hologram to show different scenarios. "It can spray a mist from specialized glands in its leaves. The flowers produce pollen that carries the compound. And if anything touches it directly, the toxin is secreted through the plant's surface." Hyun-woo moved closer to the glass. "It's fascinating. How does it move? I can see the vines shifting." "We don't fully understand yet," Velrith admitted. "The plant shows signs of something close to active awareness. It responds to movement and heat. Our collection drones approached it on Virides 7, and it attacked them. Not just defensively, it pursued them. 3 drones lost," Nari added. "And these weren't cheap survey drones. These were military-grade collection units with armor plating. The toxin ate through the metal and fried their circuits." G1 pulled up her own datapad. "I've been studying the toxin's structure. It's unlike anything in the medical databases. The way it attacks nerve cells is brutally efficient. It's almost elegant in its lethality." Hyun-woo stared at the plant, his mind working. "May I see the molecular analysis of the toxin?" "Won." Kaylor hesitated, then transferred the data to Hyun-woo's personal pad. As Hyun-woo scrolled through the information, his frown deepened. "This binding mechanism. It's targeting specific neural receptors." "Correct," Kaylor said. "Receptors that are universal across all tested species. That's what makes it so deadly. It attacks the fundamental structure of neural function. But the receptor types listed here," Hyun-woo continued, still reading. "Humans have slight variations in these. Our neural chemistry developed differently, because Earth was isolated from the rest of the galaxy." Velrith's mandibles clicked sharply. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything yet," Hyun-woo said carefully. "But I think we should include human neural tissue in the testing protocols." "Absolutely not," Kaylor said immediately. "That would be reckless. The pattern is clear. This toxin kills everything. There's no reason to think humans would be any different." "Maybe," Hyun-woo said, still watching the beautiful, deadly plant. "But maybe not." Velrith made a gesture with 2 of his arms. "For now, we proceed with existing protocols. No one approaches the Mortis Florae without full protective equipment and authorization. No exceptions." As they left the observation room, Hyun-woo glanced back one more time. The plant's flowers seemed to pulse with inner light. Something about it called to him, not with danger, but with possibility. He wondered what secrets it held, and whether the galaxy's deadliest plant might not be quite as deadly as everyone believed. At least not to everyone. 5 days had passed since Hyun-woo and Dae-sung arrived at the station. 5 days of careful observation, remote testing, and absolutely no progress. The Mortis Flore sat in its sealed chamber, beautiful and untouchable, while the research team tried everything they could think of to study it safely. Every remote handler that entered the chamber came back damaged. The plant seemed to sense the machines approaching and would spray its toxin or lash out with its vines. 3 more handlers had been destroyed just trying to collect a single leaf sample. The metal arms would extend, get within a meter of the plant, and then sparks would fly as the toxin ate through the machinery. Kaylor was becoming increasingly frustrated. He paced back and forth in the observation room, his scales flickering between blue and red. "This is impossible," he growled. "We cannot study what we cannot touch. We need tissue samples. We need to understand the cellular structure. But every tool we send in dies. Maybe we need to change our approach," Dae-sung suggested carefully. He had been studying the plant's behavior patterns, noting how it responded to different stimuli. The plant reacts to the handlers because they move in predictable patterns. What if we tried something less mechanical? And, like what? Ji-won asked. She had been monitoring the atmospheric readings from inside the chamber, looking for any weakness they could exploit. "A drone with more random movement," Dae-sung explained, pulling up his designs on the holographic display. "Something that mimics organic motion rather than robotic precision. The plant might not recognize it as a threat." Velrith considered this, his compound eyes examining the plans. "It's worth attempting. But we need to upgrade the containment protocols first. If the drone fails and spreads the toxin, we need to ensure it doesn't escape the chamber." Nari stepped forward, wiping grease from her hands. "I can reinforce the seals on the chamber, add redundant filters to the air system, but it'll take me a few hours to implement." "Do it," Velrith ordered. "We will attempt the collection tomorrow morning." The next day, the entire team gathered in the observation room. Nari had worked through the night, and her eyes showed it. But she nodded confidently when Velrith asked if the containment was secure. "Triple sealed. Even if that plant explodes, nothing is getting out of that chamber." The new drone entered through a small airlock built into the chamber's ceiling. It was smaller than the previous handlers, with multiple flexible arms that moved in fluid, almost organic patterns. Dae-sung controlled it from the observation room, his hands steady on the controls. The Mortis Flore's vines shifted as the drone descended. The flowers at the top of the plant seemed to track the machine's movement. Everyone held their breath. "Easy," Hyunwoo whispered, though he knew Dae-sung couldn't hear him over his concentration. "Just a little closer." The drone's arm extended toward a lower leaf, moving in a gentle wave rather than a straight line. It got within centimeters of the plant. Then, 5 centimeters. Then, contact. "I've got it," Dae-sung breathed. The drone's pincer carefully gripped the edge of a leaf. Beginning extraction. That's when everything went wrong. The Mortis Flore moved faster than anyone thought possible. Its vines whipped upward, wrapping around the drone in an instant. The flowers released a spray of liquid that coated the machine. Sparks flew as the toxin began eating through the drone's hull. "Abort!" Velrith shouted. "Get it out!" But the plant wasn't finished. As the drone tried to retreat, one of the vines snapped. The tension in the plant's stem released like a spring, and suddenly a portion of the chamber's interior seal cracked. It wasn't much, just a small break in the secondary containment, but it was enough. Warning sirens blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the observation room. The main computer's voice announced calmly, "Containment breach. Sealing. Affected areas. Unrelb. This ma. And a dusho." Unrel an example. Hyunwoo and Nari were standing closest to the chamber's monitoring station, a small alcove that jutted slightly into the containment room for better sensor readings. As the seal cracked, a fine mist of the toxin sprayed directly into their space before the emergency barriers could deploy. Hyunwoo felt the liquid hit his face and hands. It was cold, almost refreshing. He blinked reflexively, trying to clear his eyes. "No!" Ji-won screamed, running toward them. But Velrith caught her with two of his arms, holding her back. "You cannot help them," Velrith said, his mechanical voice somehow conveying grief. "Opening the sealed area would expose us all." Nari looked down at her arm where the toxin had splashed her. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Oh, God. I'm dead. I'm dead." She started hyperventilating, backing away from the mist even though it was already on her skin. Through the observation window, everyone watched. Kaylor pulled up medical readouts on his display. "Based on the quantity of exposure," he said quietly, "the human male has 17 seconds. Maybe 20. The female, perhaps 30 seconds. Due to lesser exposure." Ji-won pressed against the sealed barrier, tears streaming down her face. Hyun-woo wiped the liquid from his face with his sleeve. He looked at his hands, turning them over. Something felt strange. Not painful. Not like dying. Just strange. "I can hear you," he said through the intercom. His voice sounded normal, maybe a bit confused. "Ji-won, I think I'm okay?" "You're in shock," Kaylor said quickly. "You cannot feel the damage yet. Your neural system is shutting down. I'm sorry." 10 seconds passed, then 20, then 30. Hyun-woo flexed his fingers. "My hands feel tingly. Like when you sit on them too long and they fall asleep. But it's not bad. Kind of interesting, actually." Velrith's mandibles hung open. "Impossible." 40 seconds. 50. A full minute. Nari had collapsed against the wall, sobbing. "Nari," Ji-won said urgently through the intercom. "Listen to me. Look at Hyun-woo. Look at him." Nari raised her head, her face wet with tears. Hyun-woo was standing there, looking at his hands with scientific curiosity rather than terror. He wasn't convulsing. He wasn't collapsing. He was fine. "What's happening?" Dae-sung asked, his voice barely audible. "Why isn't he dead? Why?" Kaylor's claws clicked rapidly across his control panel, pulling up every reading he could from the sealed room. "His vital signs are normal. Elevated heart rate, but that's from adrenaline. His neural activity is..." He paused, staring at the display. "His neural activity is completely normal." Hyun-woo walked closer to the chamber where the mortis flore still writhed. Some of the plant's toxin dripped from the broken seal. Without thinking, moving on pure scientific instinct, Hyun-woo reached out and touched the liquid with his bare finger. "No!" Multiple voices shouted at once. Hyun-woo rubbed the toxin between his finger and thumb, feeling its texture. "It's slippery. Oily. The tingling is stronger when I touch it directly. But it's fading already." He looked up at the observation window where his colleagues stared in horror and disbelief. "I think I'm immune." Ji-won's hands were shaking as she checked and rechecked her medical scanners. "That's not possible. Nothing is immune to Thanatos compound. Nothing." Quote, "Humans are," Hyun-woo said simply. He looked at Nari, who was still crying but no longer hysterical. "Nari, how do you feel?" Nari checked her arm where the toxin had touched her. The tingling sensation was already fading. I feel okay. Scared, but okay." She laughed. A slightly hysterical sound. "I'm not dead. Neither of you are dead," Velrith said slowly, as if trying to convince himself of something impossible. "Against all known science, against 17 different species worth of testing, against everything we know about this toxin. You are not dead." Kaylor was rapidly typing, running calculations. "This changes everything. If humans are immune, then we need to understand why. We need to test this properly. Later," Ji-won said firmly. "Right now, I need to get them out of there and run a full medical examination. Open the emergency airlock." The airlock cycled open, and Hyun-woo and Nari stepped through into the decontamination chamber. They were sprayed with neutralizing agents and passed through 3 more sealed doors before finally emerging into the observation room. G1 immediately began scanning them with her medical equipment. Her hands were steadier now, falling into the familiar rhythm of her work. No neural damage. No cellular breakdown. Your bodies are processing the toxin and removing it. In Hyun-woo's case, it's almost completely gone already. How long was I exposed? Hyun-woo asked. Direct contact for approximately 45 seconds, Kaylor replied. Ambient exposure for another 30 seconds during decontamination. Enough toxin to kill a dozen of my people. Hyun-woo rolled his shoulders, feeling normal except for a very slight tingling in his fingertips. It just felt tingly. Maybe a bit like the sensation after eating really spicy food. But that's all. Velrith approached Hyun-woo slowly, as if the human himself had become something dangerous. Do you understand what this means? We have marked entire worlds as uninhabitable because of toxins like this. Worlds rich in resources, perfect for colonization, but deadly to every known species. He paused, his mandibles clicking softly. Every species, except yours. Dae-sung was already pulling up star charts. How many worlds are classified as uninhabitable? Due to toxic plant life? Hundreds, Velrith answered. Perhaps thousands. In the chamber behind them, the mortis florae had calmed, its vines settling back into their usual gentle swaying. The plant looked no less beautiful, no less deadly, but now, for the first time since its discovery, it had failed to kill, and that changed everything. The medical bay had become the center of activity on the station. For 3 days straight, G1 ran test after test on both Hyun-woo and Nari. Blood samples, tissue samples, brain scans, neural mapping, genetic sequencing. Every piece of equipment in the medical wing was working overtime to understand what should have been impossible. Hyun-woo sat on the examination table for the 5th time that day while G1 attached electrodes to his head. How are you not tired of this yet? He asked. I am tired, G1 admitted, dark circles under her eyes betraying her exhaustion. But this is the most important medical discovery in galactic history. Your immunity to Thanatos compound doesn't make sense by any known biology. Across the room, Nari was undergoing similar tests with Kaylor, overseeing the biochemical analysis. The reptilian scientist had barely left the medical bay since the accident. His scales remained a dark, agitated blue, but his eyes showed something that might have been excitement. The toxin is definitely present in your systems, Kaylor explained, studying the holographic display of Nari's blood work. But look here. He zoomed in on a cellular level. Your neural receptors are binding with the toxin, but not in the way it binds with other species. Dae-sung, who had appointed himself the official recorder of all this data, leaned in closer. What's the difference? In other species, the toxin locks onto the receptor and blocks all neural signals, Kaylor said. Complete shutdown. But in human cells, the toxin binds briefly, causes a temporary disruption, and then your body's chemistry breaks it down and flushes it out. So it's not that we're completely immune, Nari said, rubbing her arm where they had drawn the 10th blood sample. It's more like our bodies treat it as a temporary irritant rather than a fatal poison. Exactly, G1 confirmed. She pulled up brain scans showing Hyun-woo's neural activity during exposure. See these patterns? Your neurons are firing normally. There's a brief fluctuation when the toxin hits, maybe lasting 30 seconds, and then everything returns to baseline. Velrith had been observing quietly from the doorway. Now he stepped forward, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. I have contacted the Galactic Biological Safety Council. They are sending a representative to verify these findings. They don't believe us? Hyun-woo asked. Would you? Velrith replied. A universal toxin that kills everything suddenly fails to kill one species? It sounds like either contaminated samples or faulty equipment. They need to see it themselves. The representative arrived 2 days later. Ambassador Thelnix was an avian, tall and covered in sleek white feathers with piercing golden eyes. She moved with the precise dignity of someone used to being the most important person in any room. Behind her came a team of 3 scientists from different species, each carrying their own testing equipment. "I have reviewed your data," Thelnix said without preamble, her voice sharp and clear. "It is interesting, but inconclusive. I will need to conduct independent verification." Kalor bristled, his scales flashing red. "Are you suggesting our work is incompetent?" "I am suggesting that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence," Thelnix replied coolly. "The Thanatos compound has a perfect lethality record across 17 species. If humans are truly immune, we will need more than contaminated accident reports." G1 stepped forward, keeping her voice professional despite the obvious insult. "We welcome independent testing. Both Hyunwoo and Nari have agreed to participate in controlled exposure experiments. That won't be necessary at first," one of Thelnix's scientists said. He was a being made mostly of crystalline structures that chimed softly when he moved. "We will begin with your biological samples and verify the cellular response." They worked for 3 days. Thelnix's team brought their own equipment, took their own samples, and ran their own analyses. They barely spoke to the station's researchers, maintaining a cold professional distance. Hyunwoo could see Kalor growing more agitated with each passing hour of being ignored. Finally, on the 3rd day, Thelnix called everyone to the main observation room. Her expression was unreadable as she activated a holographic display. "The cellular analysis is consistent with your findings," she admitted, though the words seemed to pain her. "Human neural chemistry does process the Thanatos compound differently. However, isolated cells are not the same as a living organism. We need to conduct a controlled exposure test." "Absolutely not," Velrith said immediately. "The risk is too high." "I'll do it," Hyunwoo said, standing up. "I've already been exposed once. If it will prove that we're immune, I'll do it again." G1 grabbed his arm. "We don't know if repeated exposure will have cumulative effects. Maybe your body can handle it once. But what about twice? 3 times? That's exactly what we need to determine," Thelnix said. "But we will begin with minimal exposure, the smallest amount that has proven lethal to other species." The test was scheduled for the next morning. G1 insisted on an 8-hour fasting period and a full medical baseline before the experiment. She barely slept that night, running simulations and preparing emergency medical protocols just in case. When morning came, they gathered in a specially prepared testing chamber. This one was smaller than the containment room for the Mortis Flore, with clear walls on all sides, so everyone could observe. Medical equipment lined one wall, ready to respond instantly if something went wrong. Hyunwoo wore a simple medical gown and stood in the center of the chamber. Around him, the observation room filled with people. The station's regular crew, Thelnix and her team, and even some additional personnel who had heard about the test. Everyone wanted to see if the impossible was really true. "We will begin with 1 milliliter of diluted Thanatos compound," Thelnix announced. "This concentration has a 100% fatality rate for all tested species. Exposure time will be 30 seconds, followed by immediate decontamination." Ji-won's voice came through the intercom, tight with worry. "Hyunwoo, if you feel anything wrong, anything at all, you tell me immediately." "I will," he promised, trying to keep his voice steady. He was confident, but not stupid. This was still a substance that had killed every living thing it touched. A small mechanical arm extended from the ceiling, carrying a sealed vial. The arm stopped above Hyunwoo's extended hand. "Beginning exposure. In 3, 2, 1. A single drop of clear liquid fell onto Hyunwoo's palm. The observation room went silent. Everyone watched the monitors, showing his vital signs, his brain activity, his neural responses. Seconds ticked by. Hyunwoo felt the familiar tingling sensation spread from his palm up his arm. It was like pins and needles, but not unpleasant. "Tingling in my hand and arm," he reported calmly. "No pain. No difficulty breathing. Heart rate feels normal." 10 seconds. 20. 30. Decontamination, Thelnix ordered. The mechanical arm sprayed, neutralizing solution, on Hyunwoo's hand. He was guided through 3 washing stations before being allowed back into the observation room. Ji-won immediately began scanning him. Neural activity normal. Heart rate slightly elevated but within normal stress response range. No cellular damage detected. One of Thelnix's scientists, the crystalline being, chimed excitedly. Remarkable. The toxin is already being metabolized in the bloodstream, breaking down into harmless compounds. Increase concentration, Thelnix ordered. 5 milliliters. Undiluted. They ran 4 more tests that day, each with increasing amounts of the toxin. Hyunwoo's response never changed. Tingling, mild warmth. A slight euphoric feeling that he described as like a caffeine buzz. And then nothing. Within an hour of each exposure, his body had completely cleared the toxin. By the final test, even Thelnix's rigid composure had cracked. She stared at the data with something close to wonder. This is unprecedented. Absolutely unprecedented. What about other humans? Daesung asked. Could this be unique to just Hyunwoo and Nari? We need more test subjects, Thelnix agreed. But if this is a species-wide trait? She trailed off, the implications hanging in the air. Nari volunteered for testing the next day. Her results were identical to Hyunwoo's. The station put out a call for human volunteers. And within a week, 6 more humans had arrived. Scientists, engineers, even a cargo pilot who heard about the research and wanted to contribute. Every single human tested showed the same immunity. Some had slightly different reactions. One woman said, the tingling reminded her of mint, while a young man described it as fizzy, like soda. But none of them suffered any harmful effects. Kaylor compiled all the data into a comprehensive report. It's your evolutionary isolation, he explained at the final briefing. Humans developed on Earth without any contact with galactic biology. Your neural chemistry evolved under completely different pressures. What the rest of the galaxy considers universal receptors, you have variations of. Slight differences, but enough to matter. So we're immune to Thanatos compounds specifically, Hyunwoo said. What about other universal toxins? The room went quiet. Velrith's mandibles clicked rapidly. That is the question. Isn't it? If humans can resist this, what else might you be immune to? Thelnix closed her datapad with a decisive snap. The Galactic Council will need to be informed immediately. This discovery will require a complete re-evaluation of human biological classifications. Your species has just become either the most valuable or the most dangerous discovery in recent history. Why dangerous? Nari asked. Because, Thelnix said slowly, there are thousands of worlds classified as death worlds. Planets we cannot colonize because their biology is too toxic, their chemistry too hostile. Worlds we've written off as uninhabitable. She gestured to the vial of Thanatos compound sitting on the table. If humans can walk through what kills us, what else can they survive? Dawn. Back in the observation room, the Mortis Flore swayed gently in its chamber. No longer the deadliest thing on the station. That distinction, everyone was starting to realize, might belong to the humans themselves. The news spread through the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks of Thelnix's report to the Galactic Council, every major news network was running stories about the humans who could survive the deadliest toxins known to science. Stock markets fluctuated as corporations realized the implications. Exploration companies began pulling up old survey data on abandoned planets. Hyunwoo found himself at the center of a political storm he never wanted. Delegations from different species came to the station, all wanting to verify the findings themselves. Some came with cooperation in mind. Others came with suspicion, wondering if humans had somehow engineered this immunity as a biological weapon. This is exhausting, he told Ji-won one evening, in the station's small cafeteria. I'm a botanist. I just wanted to study plants. You're more than that now, G1 replied, pushing her food around her plate. She looked as tired as he felt. Whether you like it or not, you've become a symbol of human potential in the galaxy. Dae-sung joined them, carrying a datapad that he set on the table with a grin. Have you seen the proposal for the Viridis 7 expedition? What about it? Hyunwoo asked. The Galactic Coalition approved it this morning. They're sending a research team to explore the planet properly. And guess what? The entire ground team has to be human. Hyunwoo sat up straighter. They're actually going through with it? They have to. Dae-sung explained, pulling up the official documents. Viridis 7 is one of the richest planets in terms of biological diversity, but it's been off limits for decades because everything there is toxic. Now that we know humans can survive the toxins, the planet is suddenly accessible. Nari appeared at their table, looking excited. I heard you talking about Viridis 7. I just got assigned as the chief engineer for the expedition. We're really doing this. Over the next month, preparations moved forward at incredible speed. The Galactic Coalition wanted to prove that the discovery of human immunity was more than just a laboratory curiosity. They wanted to show it had practical applications. Viridis 7 became a test case. The team was kept small for the first mission. Hyunwoo would lead as the chief botanist. G1 would handle medical duties and biological sampling. Nari would manage the equipment and establish a base camp. Dae-sung would coordinate research and maintain communication with the orbital station. Velrith insisted on coming, despite knowing he could never set foot on the planet's surface. I have studied toxic worlds for 30 years, he said, his mandibles clicking with determination. I will not miss this opportunity. Even if I must observe from orbit. Kaylor surprised everyone by volunteering as well. Someone needs to analyze the samples you collect, he grumbled. And I don't trust anyone else to do it properly. The ship that would carry them to Viridis 7 was called the Resilience. It was a mid-sized research vessel with extensive laboratory facilities and enough supplies for a 3-month mission. The orbital station that would house Velrith, Kaylor, and the support staff could sustain them for even longer. As they approached Viridis 7, Hyunwoo pressed against the observation window, watching the planet grow larger. It was beautiful. Swirling green clouds covered most of the surface, broken by patches of deep blue ocean and brown mountain ranges. From space, it looked peaceful. Atmospheric analysis shows toxin concentrations 5 times higher than our models predicted, Kaylor reported from his station. The entire atmosphere is saturated with various compounds. Most species would die from breathing the air. Good thing we're not most species, Nari said, checking her equipment one last time. The landing site had been chosen carefully. A flat area near the equator, close to what appeared to be ruins of some kind. Ancient structures, detected by orbital scans, remnants of whatever species had once lived on this deadly world. The shuttle separated from the Resilience and began its descent. Hyunwoo felt his heart pounding as they entered the atmosphere. This was it. They were about to become the first beings to walk on Viridis 7 inches, perhaps thousands of years. The shuttle touched down with barely a bump. Through the windows, they could see thick vegetation pressing close to their landing site. Massive trees, with trunks wider than the shuttle itself. Vines hanging like curtains between the branches. Flowers in colors that seemed to glow in the dim light filtering through the canopy. Environmental suits are optional, G1 said, reading her instruments. The air is breathable for humans. High oxygen content, actually. But I recommend we wear basic protective gear. For the first excursion, they put on light jumpsuits and gloves, more out of caution than necessity. As the shuttle's door opened, a wave of humid air rushed in, carrying scents that were alien, yet somehow familiar. Green growing things, damp earth, and something sweet that might have been flowers. Hyunwoo stepped out first, his boots sinking slightly into the soft ground. He took a breath of Viridis 7's air and felt a slight tingling in his lungs. Not painful, just noticeable. Air is fine, he reported. Mild sensation, probably from the ambient toxins, but nothing concerning. Nari emerged next, followed by Dae-sung and Ji-won. They stood together at the base of the shuttle ramp, looking out at the alien jungle surrounding them. "This is incredible," Dae-sung whispered. From orbit, Velrith's voice crackled through their communicators. "Your suit's sensors are showing toxin levels that would kill my species in under a minute. Please, be careful." "We will," Hyunwoo promised. He approached the nearest tree, running his gloved hand along the bark. It was smooth and warm to the touch. A clear liquid oozed from where his fingers pressed. Taking first sample, he carefully collected some of the tree's secretion in a sealed container. The moment the liquid touched his glove, the material began to smoke slightly. "Looks like the toxins eat through our synthetic materials. We'll need to work bare-handed for most collection." "Absolutely not," Ji-won said immediately. "That's too dangerous. We came here to study the plants," Hyunwoo replied. He pulled off his gloves and touched the tree bark directly. The liquid was cool and slick. His fingers tingled, but no more than they had with the mortis florae. "See? I'm fine." Over the next few hours, they explored the immediate area around the shuttle. Every plant they encountered was toxic to some degree. Some produced neurotoxins like the mortis florae. Others had caustic secretions that could dissolve metal. One flower's pollen made Nari sneeze for 5 minutes straight, but caused no actual harm. "This one makes my tongue go numb," Hyunwoo said, examining a bush with purple berries. He had broken protocol and tasted a tiny amount of the berry's juice. Ji-won looked like she wanted to strangle him. "You cannot keep eating the alien plants," she said through clenched teeth. "It's fine," Hyunwoo insisted. "Look, I'm documenting everything. This berry's toxin affects oral receptors, but doesn't enter the bloodstream in significant amounts. It's actually kind of pleasant. Tastes like mint mixed with something spicy." Dae-sung was cataloging a vine that produced brilliant red flowers. "The pollen from this one gives me mild vertigo. Everything feels like it's tilting slightly to the left, but it fades after a few minutes." They set up camp as the sun began to set, turning the sky shades of orange and purple that Earth had never seen. The sounds of the jungle changed as darkness fell. Strange calls echoed through the trees. Something large moved through the undergrowth nearby, but they never saw what it was. On the second day, they hiked to the ruins. The structures were massive, built from a stone that had resisted the jungle's attempts to reclaim them. Walls still stood, carved with symbols in a language nobody recognized. "A civilization lived here," Nari said, running her hands over the carved stone. "They built cities, had culture, created art, and they're gone." Inside one of the larger buildings, they found something that changed everything. A sealed chamber, protected by doors that had kept out the jungle for who knew how long. Inside were data cores, ancient technology that somehow still had power. Dae-sung worked for hours to interface with the alien systems. Finally, information began flowing to his portable terminal. Text, images, and what might have been video recordings. "I'm getting translation software to work on this," he said excitedly. "Give me a few hours." By evening, they had their first partial translations. The story they told was grim. The species that built these cities had been advanced, perhaps more so than the current galactic civilization. They had engineered the plants of Viridis 7, creating them as the perfect defense system. Plants that could protect themselves, that could adapt and evolve, that could kill any threat. It had worked too well. The plants evolved faster than their creators anticipated. Each generation became more toxic, more aggressive, more efficient at killing. Within a few hundred years, the civilization found itself trapped. They couldn't harvest food because the crops killed them. They couldn't even maintain their technology because the plants dissolved the materials they needed. The last entries in the database were desperate pleas for help that were never answered. The civilization died slowly, suffocated by the perfect defense they had created. "This is a warning," Ji-won said quietly, reading the translated text. They're telling anyone who finds this not to make the same mistake. Hyun-woo looked out at the jungle pressing against the ruins. But we're different. We can survive what they couldn't. Should we, though? Nari asked. This planet killed an entire civilization. Maybe it should be left alone. Back at the shuttle that night, they debated what to do with the information. Velrith listened from orbit, his voice thoughtful through the communicator. You have found something important, but the decision of what to do with it is beyond my authority. We must report to the Galactic Council. What do you think will happen? Daesung asked. Velrith was quiet for a long moment. I think humanity just found thousands of worlds that only they can colonize. And I think the rest of the galaxy is going to have to decide how they feel about that. Hyun-woo lay in his sleeping bag that night, listening to the alien sounds of the jungle. Somewhere out there, plants that should kill him grew in wild abundance. Plants that represented death to every other species in the galaxy. But to humans, they were just plants. He wondered if the species that built the ruins had ever imagined that somewhere in the galaxy, there might be beings who could walk through their deadly garden and feel nothing but a pleasant tingle. 6 months after the Viridies 7 expedition returned, the galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. The discovery of the ruins and the warning they contained had sparked intense debate in the Galactic Council. Some species argued that Viridies 7 and similar worlds should be quarantined, left as monuments to the danger of biological engineering. Others saw opportunity where there had only been death before. Humanity, as usual, took a third option that nobody else had considered. Hyun-woo stood in a pressurized greenhouse on the human colony ship Genesis, watching rows of Mortis florae grow under carefully controlled lights. The plants were thriving, their flowers more vibrant than they had been on the research station. Around them grew dozens of other species from Viridies 7, each more toxic than the last. The hydroponics team says we'll have our first harvest next week, Daesung said, walking down the aisle between growing beds. He was holding a datapad showing production numbers. We're already getting orders from restaurants on 3 different human worlds. Restaurants? Hyun-woo asked, though he knew exactly what his former assistant was talking about. He still found it surreal. Premium establishments willing to pay extraordinary prices for unique flavors, Daesung confirmed with a grin. Turns out that what kills other species tastes really interesting to humans. End quote. It had started as an accident, really. During the expedition to Viridies 7, Hyun-woo had tasted various plant secretions as part of his research. What he found was that many of the neurotoxins produced sensations similar to spices humans already loved. The tingling of capsaicin in hot peppers, the cooling sensation of menthol, the burn of wasabi. The planet that had killed an entire civilization was essentially a giant spice garden for humans. After returning from Viridies 7, Hyun-woo had written a paper about the parallels between the toxic compounds and human flavor receptors. A human chef on the research station had read the paper and asked if she could experiment with some of the samples. What she created changed everything. The first dish she made used a tiny amount of Mortis florae extract as a seasoning. The result tasted like nothing anyone had experienced before. A complex flavor that combined floral notes with a tingling sensation and a euphoric after effect, similar to the endorphin rush from eating extremely spicy food. She called it Death Flower Spice. Within a month, every major human food corporation was calling the research station, trying to license the compound. The galactic media couldn't believe it. Humans were turning universal toxins into condiments. Nari had seen the commercial potential immediately. She left the research station to start her own company, designing specialized equipment for harvesting and processing toxic plants. Her containment suits allowed human workers to safely handle the plants, while the automated systems they replaced would have been destroyed by the toxins. Nari's equipment division is expanding again, Daesung mentioned as they walked through the greenhouse. She just won a contract to outfit the new colony on Viridies 7. There's actually going to be a colony? Hyun-woo asked, though he had heard rumors. Full settlement, 5,000 people by the end of the year. They're calling it New Eden, which I think is ironic given that everything there can kill non-humans. They pass through a security checkpoint into another section of the greenhouse. This area held experimental plants, new species being tested for commercial viability. A team of human researchers worked among plants that would have required maximum containment protocols on any multi-species station. One young researcher, barely out of university, was taste-testing berries from a bush that had killed a survey drone on a planet called Toxis 3. "This one is interesting," she said, making notes. "Starts sweet, then builds to an intense tingling that lasts about 5 minutes. Might work well in desserts." Hyun-woo shook his head in amazement. A year ago, he had been cautiously studying the Mortis florae from behind layers of containment. Now humans were farming the galaxy's deadliest plants, like they were tomatoes. His communicator chimed with an incoming call. It was G1, calling from the medical research facility on Earth. Her face appeared on the small screen, looking tired, but excited. "Hyun-woo, you need to see this. We've been testing human immunity to other toxic compounds, not just plant-based ones. The results are incredible." "What did you find?" "Humans can process over 300 compounds that are universally toxic to other species. Not just plant neurotoxins, chemical compounds, heavy metals in certain concentrations, even some radiation types that other species find lethal. We're publishing the full list next week, but I wanted you to know first." Hyun-woo felt a chill run down his spine. 300? At least. "We're still testing." "Hyun-woo, do you understand what this means? There are entire categories of planets that other species can't survive on. Worlds with toxic atmospheres, unusual chemistry, high radiation levels. Humans can live on many of them with minimal protection. We're not just immune to plant toxins," Hyun-woo said slowly. "We're generally more resistant to hostile environments." "Exactly. Earth's isolation from the galactic community wasn't just biological. It was environmental. Your planet is actually relatively hostile compared to many inhabited worlds. Humans evolved to survive conditions that other species would consider barely survivable." After the call ended, Hyun-woo stood quietly in the greenhouse, thinking about the implications. Humanity had been part of galactic civilization for less than a century. They were the newcomers, the youngest members of an ancient community. And now, they were discovering that they could go places, survive conditions, and utilize resources that had been written off as inaccessible. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. It was an invitation to speak at the Galactic Biological Sciences Conference on the station New Horizon. The topic: Expanding Our Understanding of Habitable Zones, the Human Exception. Dae-sung looked over his shoulder at the message. "You're becoming famous. The botanist who proved that death worlds are just misunderstood." "I'm not comfortable with the fame," Hyun-woo admitted. "I just wanted to study plants." "Well, you're studying them," Dae-sung said, gesturing at the rows of deadly flora surrounding them. Just in a way nobody expected. 3 months later, Hyun-woo stood on the observation deck of New Horizon Station, looking out at the planet Virides 7 floating below. The first human colony was visible on the night side, a cluster of lights in the jungle. Cargo ships moved between the surface and orbit, carrying harvested plants and processed compounds. Velrith joined him at the window, keeping a respectful distance. The insectoid director had retired from the research station but remained a close friend. His mandibles clicked softly as he watched the colony lights. "I never imagined I would see cities on that world," Velrith said. "For 30 years, I studied it from orbit, convinced it was forever beyond reach." "Does it bother you?" Hyun-woo asked. "That humans can go where your species cannot?" Velrith considered the question carefully. "At first, yes. It felt unfair. But I have come to see it differently. The galaxy is vast and diverse. Different species have different strengths. Your people can survive in hostile environments. My people excel at theoretical physics. The Draxi are masters of chemistry. The Avians have unmatched diplomatic skills. We complement each other. The Draxi, the Avians, on Oper. That's a diplomatic way of looking at it. Perhaps. But consider this. Before your immunity was discovered, those toxic worlds were just dead zones on our maps. Now they're resources, new frontiers, opportunities for research and growth. Your ability to survive them benefits everyone. Down on the surface, a new agricultural complex was being built. It would process plants from Veritas 7 and dozens of similar worlds, turning universal toxins into products humans could use. Spices, medicines, even recreational compounds that produced mild euphoric effects. The galactic market for human spices had exploded. What started with death flower spice had expanded into an entire industry. Restaurants across human space featured exotic seasonings from death worlds. Chefs competed to create new dishes using the most extreme ingredients. Food critics wrote reviews discussing the tingle intensity and neural buzz duration of various toxic compounds. Other species found the whole thing horrifying and fascinating in equal measure. Cooking shows featuring human chefs casually handling substances that could wipe out cities became surprise hits across the galaxy. The most popular show was called Death Kitchen, where contestants prepared meals using progressively more dangerous ingredients. The finale featured a dish made with pure Thanatos compound, the toxin from the Mortis Florae. Kaylor had sent Hyunwoo a message after that episode aired. I watched your species sprinkle neurotoxin on pasta like it was salt. I don't know whether to be impressed or terrified. Probably both. 2. www. 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 What are you thinking about? Velrith asked, noticing Hyunwoo's distant expression. Just remembering when I first arrived at your station, Hyunwoo replied. When you showed me the Mortis Florae and told me it was the deadliest thing you had ever studied. Now we grow it in gardens and sell it at grocery stores, and I still will not touch it. Velrith said firmly. Some fears are too deep to overcome. Even when logic says they're unnecessary. A cargo ship passed below them, heading up from the surface. Its hold was full of processed plant compounds, bound for markets throughout human space. Inside those containers were substances that could kill billions of non-humans. To humans, they were just another shipment of spices. Hyunwoo's communicator chimed again. Another message. This time, from the Expansion Committee. They wanted to discuss preliminary surveys of 47 additional worlds that had been classified as uninhabitable. The request was simple. Could human teams evaluate them for colonization potential? They're not going to stop asking, Velrith observed. Every toxic world, every hostile environment, every planet that was previously written off. They will want humans to explore all of them. Velrith, 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 Velrith. Observed. Velrith. Observed. I know, Hyunwoo said. And humans will probably say yes. We're curious like that. We want to see what's out there, even if it should kill us. Especially if it should kill you, Velrith corrected. Down in the colony, the first harvest festival was beginning. Humans gathered to celebrate a successful growing season on a world that had killed its previous inhabitants. They would eat food seasoned with neurotoxins, drink beverages infused with compounds that were technically biological weapons, and probably complain if the spice level wasn't intense enough. Somewhere in the galaxy, on a planet whose atmosphere was corrosive to most known life, a human survey team was probably landing right now. They would step out of their ship, taste the air, and report back something like, a bit tangy, but breathable. Hyunwoo pulled up a file on his datapad. It was a new paper he was writing, titled, Reconsidering the Definition of Habitable, A Human Perspective. In it, he argued that the galactic community's classification system for planets was based on the lowest common denominator of survivability. But what if they expanded their definition to include species-specific advantages? Humans couldn't breathe underwater like the Aquarians. They couldn't survive in extreme cold like the Glacians. They couldn't process pure energy like the Luminars. But humans could walk through toxic jungles, eat neurotoxins, and colonize worlds that should by all rights kill them. The spice of life, Hyunwoo murmured. What? Velrith asked. It's a human saying. Variety is the spice of life. It means that diversity and new experiences make life interesting, appropriate, Velrith said, his mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. Your species has certainly added variety to the galaxy. Though I think you take the spice metaphor a bit too literally. Below them, Viridius 7 continued its rotation, a world reborn. The plants that had killed an ancient civilization now fed a new one. The difference wasn't in the plants. They were just as deadly as they had always been. The difference was in who was trying to survive them. Hyunwoo remembered the first time he had touched the Mortis Flore, felt the tingling in his fingers, and realized he wasn't going to die. That moment had changed everything. Not just for him, but for humanity's place in the galaxy. They were the species that could eat death for breakfast and ask for seconds. They were the colonizers of impossible worlds, the harvesters of toxic gardens, the beings who looked at universal poisons and saw flavors worth exploring. One species' fatal neurotoxin was indeed another species' hot sauce, and humanity had developed quite the taste for spicy food. Hyunwoo smiled, watching the lights of New Eden grow brighter as more colonists arrived. The galaxy was bigger than anyone had realized, not because new worlds had been discovered, but because old worlds had been re-examined through human eyes. And somewhere, on a shelf in a human kitchen, a bottle labeled Death Flower Spice, Extreme Edition, sat next to the salt and pepper, waiting to make dinner just a little more interesting.